December 7, 1941. A peaceful Sunday morning that turned into a nightmare no one could forget. The sun rose over Hawaii's Pearl Harbor, calm waves kissed the shores, and soldiers prepared for another quiet day. But within minutes, the sky was filled with roaring engines, smoke, and flames. Without warning, hundreds of Japanese warplanes descended from above like a storm of steel and fire. In just 2 hours, America witnessed its darkest hour, a moment that changed the world forever. The attack on Pearl Harbor was not just a surprise. It was one of the most devastating ambush in military history. At exactly 7:55 a.m., Japanese aircraft launched their first wave of assault. Bombs rained down on U.S. battleships, torpedoes ripped through steel hulls, and explosions shattered the morning silence. Within minutes, the mighty USS Arizona was torn apart by a direct hit, killing over 1,000 men instantly. The USS Oklahoma capsized, trapping sailors inside. Battleships burned, planes were destroyed on the ground, and the harbor turned into a sea of fire and oil. By the end of the attack, more than 2,400 Americans were dead, nearly 1,200 wounded, and the U.S. Pacific Fleet lay crippled. The attack plunged America into World War II, a war that would last nearly 4 years and change the course of human history. But behind this tragedy was a story of secrets, warnings ignored, and bravery that refused to die. The real story behind Pearl Harbor begins long before that fateful morning. For years, tensions between the United States and Japan had been rising. Japan's empire was expanding aggressively across Asia. After invading China and threatening Southeast Asia, Tokyo aimed to dominate the Pacific. But standing in its way was the U.S. Navy. When America froze Japanese assets and imposed oil sanctions, Japan faced a desperate choice: back down or strike first. They chose war. In November 1941, Japanese Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto planned a bold and dangerous mission, a surprise attack designed to destroy America's Pacific Fleet before it could fight back. His strategy was simple: hit hard, hit fast, and cripple the U.S. Navy in one blow. Over 350 aircraft were secretly assembled: bombers, torpedo planes, and fighters. 6 powerful aircraft carriers moved silently across the Pacific Ocean, avoiding detection. Their target, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. But what makes the story truly shocking is that the U.S. had received warning signs. American intelligence had decoded several Japanese messages hinting at an attack, but no one knew where or when it would come. Some believed the target might be the Philippines or British colonies, not Hawaii. Communication failures, overconfidence, and underestimation of Japan's capabilities created the perfect storm. Even as the Japanese fleet closed in, radar operators in Hawaii detected incoming planes. But their warning was dismissed, assumed to be friendly aircraft from California. Then came the moment of truth. At 7:48 a.m., the first wave of Japanese planes reached Pearl Harbor. Lieutenant Commander Mitsuo Fukita, leading the assault, radioed the signal "Tora! Tora! Tora!" meaning "Tiger, Tiger, Tiger," the code for total surprise. Within seconds, chaos erupted. Bombs exploded across the harbor as sailors scrambled to man their guns. The USS Arizona took a massive armor-piercing bomb that detonated its ammunition magazine, creating an explosion so powerful it lifted the ship out of the water. Within 9 minutes, she sank, taking 1,177 crewmen with her. Flames engulfed nearby ships, and thick black smoke covered the sky. The USS West Virginia, USS California, and USS Nevada were all hit. Even aircraft lined up at airfields were destroyed before they could take off. Yet amid the horror, acts of heroism emerged. Sailors like Doris "Dory" Miller, an African-American cook aboard the USS West Virginia, rushed to action. Despite having no formal combat training, Miller manned an anti-aircraft gun and shot down several enemy planes, becoming one of the first American heroes of the war. Firefighters, nurses, and civilians risked their lives to rescue the wounded and extinguish fires while bombs still fell. As the second wave of attack struck, it was clear: Pearl Harbor was devastated. In less than 2 hours, the Japanese had destroyed or damaged 19 U.S. ships and nearly 200 aircraft. But the Japanese commanders made one crucial mistake. They failed to destroy American repair facilities, fuel depots, and aircraft carriers, which were not present in the harbor that day. This oversight would prove fatal in the months to come. When the smoke cleared, the harbor was unrecognizable. The once proud fleet lay silent beneath the waves. Bodies floated among the wreckage, and fires burned long into the night. For the survivors, the memory of that day would never fade. They remembered the sound of explosions, the cries for help, and the courage of those who fought back despite overwhelming odds. Back in Washington, D.C., President Franklin D. Roosevelt received the shocking news. The next day, he addressed Congress with one of the most famous speeches in history. Yesterday, he declared, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. Within minutes, Congress voted for war against Japan. America, once reluctant to enter the global conflict, was now fully committed. The attack on Pearl Harbor united the nation in grief and determination. Young men lined up to enlist. Factories shifted overnight to produce weapons, tanks, and planes. America's war machine roared to life. Within months, U.S. forces struck back, first in the Pacific, then across the world. But while the world remembers Pearl Harbor as a day of tragedy, few know the full truth of how it happened. The Japanese had meticulously planned every detail, even training pilots for months on replicas of the harbor. They believed a swift strike would force the United States to negotiate peace on Japan's terms. Instead, they awakened a giant. Some historians argue that Japan's greatest victory on December 7th was also the beginning of its downfall. By underestimating America's resolve, they set in motion a war they could never win. Less than 4 years later, Japan would face its own darkest hour, when atomic bombs fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Still, questions lingered for decades. Could Pearl Harbor have been prevented? Did the U.S. government ignore warning signs? Some conspiracy theories suggest Roosevelt knew about the attack but allowed it to happen to rally public support for war. However, most historians agree it was not a conspiracy, but a failure of intelligence, communication, and imagination. No one truly believed Japan would dare attack the United States on its own soil. The wreckage of the USS Arizona remains in Pearl Harbor today, preserved as a memorial to the lives lost. Beneath the calm waters, oil still seeps from the sunken ship, known as the Tears of the Arizona. It stands as a silent reminder of sacrifice, bravery, and the cost of unpreparedness. Every year, thousands visit the memorial to honor the fallen and remember the lesson history taught that day. Peace can vanish in an instant. The legacy of Pearl Harbor goes beyond the battlefield. It reshaped America's role in the world, turning the nation into a global superpower. It showed how quickly isolation can turn into involvement, how tragedy can forge unity, and how courage rises from ashes. But above all, Pearl Harbor reminds us that vigilance and peace come at a price. The men and women who faced the flames of that morning showed extraordinary bravery, fighting not just for survival, but for a future where such horrors would never return. As we look back today, more than 8 decades later, the story of Pearl Harbor is not just about war. It's about awakening. It's about a nation that stood up from the ashes and refused to bow. It's about heroes who fought back when the sky itself seemed to fall. December 7, 1941. The day America saw its darkest hour will forever echo through history. A day born in fire, remembered in tears, and honored in courage. And though time has passed, the lessons remain. Never underestimate your enemy. Never ignore warning signs, and never forget those who gave everything when the world needed them most. For on that day, beneath the smoke and destruction, amid chaos and loss, a nation's spirit was reborn stronger, united and ready to defend freedom at all costs. That is the real story behind Pearl Harbor, a story of tragedy, awakening, and the enduring light that rose from the darkest hour.